Every medium is a psychic, so mediums communicate with the dead, angels, and guides, and any of your loved ones who have crossed, including animals. Psychics use their intuitive gifts to give you a message. So my intuitive gift is I see aura. Oh, here, I will talk about my bowl. Is that cool? All right, so this is a tiny little singing bowl. I use it actually in my office to clear the energy. And so when people are done between sessions, if I'm not saging, depending on the amount of time I have, I go through the corners of the room and I just play the bowl. And that clears the energy of the space. I don't encourage not going to therapy anymore, but people have been in grief therapy for years and years, and they found out about me, came and saw me, and were able to gain a lot more peace and comfort, clarity. I was doing a session at this big group reading, and all of a sudden I saw this little boy. He was probably 3, blonde hair. I can say his name was Leo. And I asked the woman in front of me, who is Leo, or is August significant to you? It was the son of a friend of hers who had passed. And I've worked with Leo's mom since then quite a bit to help bring her closure and just support and understanding at what is beyond after we leave this physical world. Because one thing, especially when women lose their children, so I get teary-eyed, sorry. When moms lose their children, it literally is like a piece of them gets cut off. And so working with them to sort of, I call it like reestablishing the energetic connection with them, with their child, is one of the main reasons I do this work. Amethyst is a crystal that helps you connect with spirit or source, your higher self. She'll come with me today. I travel with crystals, usually stuffed down my shirt, but you know. This one I'll carry.
My first week in office, my first week, a box shows up from New York City. And I'm nervous because I'm like, I'm thinking, for a black man, somebody may not like this, might be a bomb, I'm super nervous. So I'm thinking, when I opened it up, it was just some people from New York that heard that I had come elected and was the first African American mayor of Alton, Illinois. And so they sent me this picture of David Dinkins, who was the first African American mayor of New York City. So I really treasure that. I really treasure that. The biggest word that always comes to my mind is legacy. That's because legacy is something that can't be taken away from you. Legacy is something that I can, once I'm dead and gone, my children, my grandchildren, and my grandchildren's children, they can all go back and say, hey, your great-great, or your great-great-great, was the first African-American mayor in the city of Alton, Illinois.
I wasn't really aware of that until I got much older and then started hearing about, the different ghost stories in town. I probably was on the police department when I first started hearing about it, and I've experienced some paranormal activity, not here, but where I was attending college, and so it wasn't like I was a non-believer because I experienced it myself. So it's one of those love-hate type of relationships because some people relish the idea of your town being considered one of the most haunted small towns, but there's other people that hate it.
Okay, you saw this gentleman, the last person who passed me a bad check in the bookstore. He's part of our decor now. Here is an article about me from 2016, from Christmas Day 2016. I can't imagine who put it up here. I'm much too modest to do such a thing myself. Some anonymous admirer of mine must have pasted it up in the bookstore when I wasn't looking. Goodness. 2016. Maybe someday I'll take it down. Alton went the route from small industrial city, industrial base, to lacking an industrial base, a bedroom community, professionals working here or in St. Louis, but a tourist destination. In a sense, you could say that Alton's history was determined by the anti-slavery movement and its role in the Civil War. I'm bringing that back to life for not just residents of southwestern Illinois, but for anyone who's interested in the abolitionist movement, the Underground Railroad, and the Civil War. I'm keeping the saga, the legacy alive, and I'm very proud of that. It makes me think that my life has had meaning. These are some of the works of John, by God, the works of John Dunphy. I tell people, first-time customers when they stop by, now you're probably asking, amidst all these books, what are the best books in the shop? Right here. The books that I've written myself. My bookstore was located in the Mineral Springs Mall from 1992 to 2002 when we moved down here. And I remember the mall is supposedly very haunted. We would have people stop by the bookstore asking me to tell them ghost stories. I'm a skeptic myself, but if the ghost people want to come here and when they do stop by, they're going off a tour. I said, I hope you encounter something that scares the living daylights out of you. That sounds bizarre, but remember, that's what they want. So I'm confirming their hopes, their fears, their worst suspicions. Yes, may you be frightened to death on the ghost tour tonight.
All right, who's been on one of our tours before? Some yeses? Okay. There's some changes if you haven't been on the tour in a while. We'll get to some of those a little bit later. Who is this your first ghost tour? Oh man, all right. I guarantee you guys by the end of the night, this is gonna be the best ghost tour you've ever been on, all right? But off in the trees over there is where the first Illinois State Penitentiary was built. Now, in 1863, smallpox broke out here in the prison. Sometimes this disease, because people would kind of come in and out from the prison and go into the city, they took smallpox with them. People in town started contracting the disease. So the prison was blamed for this. The prison was quarantined. Nobody was allowed in or out. Eventually, a group of Catholic nuns came to the area and they took over the Mansion House apartment building and turned it into a field hospital to try to take care of all the people from town. But they needed a much larger place to try to take care of all the sick prisoners. And the best place to do that was an island that stood in the center of the river. So many men died on the island, they just dug trenches and just threw all those bodies in and covered them over. At no other point in Alton's 200-year history do you have more pain and suffering and misery and death and disease than those few years that this was a Confederate prison.
I first met Luke Naliborski. I didn't know who he was. He and his wife came into my bookstore that I had on 3rd Street at the time. They came up and they bought a book, and I was there, and they bought a copy of Haunted Alton, so I signed it and put it in the bag, and they left. And I guess when they got out to the car, Luke looked at his wife and he said, that guy just like wrote in my book that I just bought. And then his wife went, that's the guy that wrote it. So that's apparently how we met, which I don't remember, but I love to give him a hard time about. So this doll, who we just call him Sam, he is a little unusual. I had a lot of cases, as I was bringing things in and moving them in, and I would be here pretty long hours. I'd be here at night, and then I would go home the next morning. And at the time, Sam was in the case over with the rest of the other dolls. But every time I would come in the next morning, we would come in and Sam would be sitting a different way. So I decided that I would put Sam in his own case because he wouldn't behave. So I got him his own box and I put him in it, and he hasn't moved since. I love Sam. I think he's great. And so I will often take him with me when I go to speak at conferences and stuff, just for fun, just because I'd like to see how people react to him. Supposedly, Mark Twain said that Alton was a dismal little river town, which is perfect. I mean, it is a perfect description. And while I don't think that the Tourism Bureau would want us to use that as a slogan, they don't mind us using one of the most haunted small towns in America, which is essentially, in my book, the same thing. And so when I moved down to this area, I just kind of went to work collecting everybody's ghost stories. One of the things you have to figure out when you guide these tours is that it's not just the stories you want to tell. It also has to be the story that people want to hear too. A buddy of mine once told me that the best way to look at the ghost stories is like it's that spoonful of sugar that goes along with all the history stories. You can trick people into a history tour. I like to find the real story behind it, the true story. And I think that's, in my opinion, this is my opinion, I think that's the right way to do it. No matter what kind of book I've written or where it's about or what kind of tour I've set up, that's always been the idea, is making sure that it's all about the history. I guess I'm already just assuming there's something after this. If there is, I plan on staying around if I can. That's my plan. I don't know that I get a choice, but if I do, I'm going to stay around as a ghost. So that's not really anything that makes me go out seeking it. No, I think I just stick with it because I love it. I love the history. I love writing about it. I love hearing about people's experiences and going out and looking for clues to whatever's next.
When a place is haunted, what that means to me is that there's a lot of energy that is being felt by multiple people, usually over a long period of time. So a space or a place of deep trauma and tragedy, multiple deaths, 100% impacts the energy in the world around it. There's a sacredness to that. That much energy leaving the planet at one time in the physical form. Sometimes it's like the events that occurred at this space, that's what causes the energy and the stuff that's happening around it.
I really never made a connection between Smallpox Island and, our, paranormal history in the city of Alton. I've always just connected it to in Alton, not even though this is close to Alton and they came from Alton and they died. So, obviously it's linked because when you read the monument, it says that these prisoners were housed in Alton and they were shipped over here because they got sick to prevent the spread of smallpox in the community. And so, there is a link, and and people want to make a paranormal connection because, like I said, it's never been part of our paranormal tours or activities or anything like that. So, tragedy is part of our history, and it's always going to be linked in some kind of way. But there's certain things, you don't want always to be, you don't always want tragedy to be associated with your history, and maybe this is more of a black eye than anything else.
A place like Smallpox Island that's associated with tragedy, with misery, being hundreds of miles from one's loved ones, one's family, becoming sick in a federal prison, being transferred to an isolation hospital on an island in Mississippi and receiving only the most rudimentary, primitive medical care of that time. Scenarios like that are fertile breeding ground for ghost stories because of the mystery, the tragic element, in my opinion. But why it just never caught on as a ghostly place? Perhaps because they thought it would be disrespectful of an actual historical site. It would be demeaning its dignity, its historical stature. Smallpox Island itself was devastated by the building of the original lock and dam back in the 1930s. Dirt, soil, bone-laden soil was used as fill for the new lock and dam. The dead were shown no reverence whatsoever. Maybe that's just a little too awkward for some people to deal with. Oh, the impact really, it may decrease, it may lessen, but it never really goes away. As long as we have the printed word, we can look up the accounts of no newspapers and magazines on file, and oral traditions passed down from one generation to another in a particular family. The impact never goes away. It may become obscure, but it never entirely goes away. This is a place of suffering and death, desolation, separation from one's loved ones. These two spots are a world apart, centuries apart. They could be from different universes.
I think awareness of it is pretty minimum. They were really just kind of forgotten until people started coming out here and bringing home souvenirs, you know, and mothers finding boxes of bones in their sons' closets and things because they'd gone out on an escapade to Smallpox Island and brought some things back with them. And that, I think, is what became sort of notorious about the island. Bringing these guys out here to die the way that they did was a cruel thing to do. But, you know, I'm sure that it was looked at the time as a necessity, a necessary evil. And so they did. And now we forget about that. We forget about what we did to our fellow man. And I think that makes us a little bit worse of a society because we have forgotten about it. Even in the generations right after the war, I think a lot of people forgot about it on purpose. And it's a story that should be remembered. So we just kind of have to lead people into remembering that kind of thing. I mean, it shouldn't make a story more popular because it's one that we understand better. It should be on equal ground, but that's hard to do because people are people. And the first thing that we're going to look at is a story that relates to us. It will never be, it's never going to be some big historic site that thousands of people are going to visit. They just aren't. It's separated from Alton. It's separated from the penitentiary. It's separated almost from history. It's so hard to find anything from it that I always keep hoping that the more we talk about it, the more we remember it, that it will create a legacy for it, because at this point, it doesn't have much of one.
All right, so before I do any sessions, especially in larger areas, I put oils on. I'm using Valor today. This helps ground your energy and ground the space. It's really like holding the space, and anyone who's working with my energy, even though we're not like directly working, you're still a part of me. I ask you to put it on just to help ground the space. So I'll put it on. I'll show you. I'll put it on your wrist. You just go like this. I think it smells pretty good. Trust all messages today come to love, bringing healing and clarity and validation. And cheers. Okay, there's two energies. It's heavy. But the feeling is like the energy is almost dread or like there's a heart expansion that wants to take place. I don't know what that feeling is called. Where it's wanting to be expansive. There needs to be some recognition though of what is here. So it feels heavy. It also feels actually, okay, it's a little, when I say heart expansive, It's an opportunity to look even at prisoners a different way than what our country has done. It's a chance to go back and actually say, well, you're a human, and that at the end of the day, you're a human. You're a human life at the end of the day. And letting it not just be a game that people play with, like, I'm gonna go do a seance over there. I'm gonna go do this, and, you know, and poking spirit. No, I'm gonna go, how do I honor and give some reverence to these lives that were lost, no matter how they were lost or what side they were on, that they matter.